Hello everybody, and welcome back to Fun Ahead TV. Your boy's busting out a LaCroix already. It's kind of a hot day out, and it's toasty in the shop, so you gotta stay cool, you know what I'm talking about? All right, today is a big episode, and I'm so thankful and glad that you're here, because you definitely don't wanna miss this one. Today, we are getting a lot done on this right here, customer George's 2000 model year Porsche Carrera. George had this car shipped up all the way from Miami, Florida to where I live in Columbus, Ohio to have water-cooled restoration do their thing to it, because this car, believe it or not, is a one-owner car. That's right, George is the original owner of this car, and he has put 177,000 miles on this car. This car means so very much to him, and he self-admittedly is getting up there in years and wants this thing to be mechanically restored so that he can pass it down to his kids. That is so freaking cool. If that doesn't tug at your car enthusiast heartstrings, then I don't know what will. So today's a big day because we have a laundry list of things to knock out on this car that are actually outside of the realm of everything that we're doing to the engine. So I'm gonna shut up. We have to go ahead and get right into it.
Pull back, drop in, and just smack the lip.
So George's Porsche Carrera right here. The car that has been named Mr. 305996 because, well, it's from Miami. You know what I'm saying? This thing has been very, very well maintained in its lifetime. George is a wonderful Porsche owner. He has done so many things throughout the years to keep this thing in really, really nice running shape. But nevertheless, time and mileage, of course, because this thing does have 177,000 miles on the clock, those two things together add up to always do a number on cars, which is why we have quite the laundry list of things to do. Start the clock.
The coolant expansion tank, lower rear control arms, replacing all four of the chassis side harnesses for the wheel speed sensor / pad wear sensors, replacing a burnout bulb in the gauge cluster, we're replacing all brake hardware, pads and rotors. We're also doing all four of the soft lines going to brake calipers, replacing both of the CV shafts. We're doing front sway bar lengths. Within the engine, we're doing timing chain guides, lifters, and VarioCam solenoids, replacing the air oil separator, replacing the oil cooler, we're replacing the rear main seal, plus a lot of other while you're in there. We're replacing all of the idler pulleys on the accessory drive, and we're replacing the thermostat and water pump, and we're going to go ahead and pop off the front bumper to do a thorough radiator clean.
Is there anything I missed? I don't think so. Obviously, the list is extensive, and even though this car has been very, very well maintained in its lifetime, well, time has a way of creeping up on parts and making them need to be replaced. So that's exactly what we're doing with this mechanical restoration of George's 2000 Porsche Carrera. We've got a lot to do. Let's go ahead and knock out this laundry list of stuffs.
The ripping and the tearing.
We're taking a quick break on working on the engine. It is completely torn down as far as we're going to take it right now, but I'm not quite ready to start throwing things back together yet because we're waiting on a few parts. But in the meantime, we can continue working on the rest of our laundry list with regards to things on the car. Now off camera just now, I did go ahead and replace that transmission mount, which actually I just realized I forgot to mention that, I think, in our laundry list. But we need to replace the transmission mount as well. So we started with this very ugly, very worn out transmission mount, and it is now looking like this. She's brand spanking new. Next up, one engine item we can go ahead and knock out is the air oil separator, so I'm gonna go ahead and do that. All right, friends, just a quick check-in. We're here at the back of the engine, as you can see, and I was just going ahead and replacing the air oil separator. Here's the old one, and basically, it appeared to me like this thing wasn't doing a sufficient enough job. There's always a little bit of oil up in those intake plenums, but it seemed like there was a bit of excessive oil up there. So I went ahead and told George, hey, let's go ahead and throw a new one in it while we're at it, because that is an absolute pain in the butt to get to when this thing is in the car. Obviously, he said, yep, let's go ahead and do it. You've got this, which goes into the crankcase, and you've got this, which needs to go down on top of this large breather hole in the side of the cylinder head. Both of them have to slot down at the same time. Now, in addition, you're of course trying to get this hose clamp up and around that and set in, just so. Kind of difficult. You're doing some acrobatics, right? Now, you're also working in a pretty tight spot. So it does appear that this is not the original one, but you can see here, this thing was not properly set down around this breather on the cylinder head for who knows how long, which means that there was not only a vacuum leak as a result of this error for a very, very long time, but also it caused a massive oil leak. I scraped probably a 1/4 inch thick layer of oily dirt and grime that was caked onto the back of this engine as a result of all the stuff that escaped out of this hole over time. Okay, so moving on. We've got our new air oil separator installed on our engine there. Now, one other thing I just wanted to chit chat about really quick. So one thing that I've found that's pretty interesting in the process of cleaning up this mating surface on the cylinder head and the valve cover side is that whatever kind of sealant the mechanic used who did this job last used a very interesting sealant. Coincidentally, the sealant that they used was hard and brown. So it looked just like timing chain guide material. And I actually chunked off so much of it just off of the valve covers in the back alone. So being that that's what I mistook it for, I'm thinking that that's exactly what this mechanic saw who most recently told George that his timing chain guides were going bad yet again. But obviously, this is not all for nothing because, as we know, the VarioCam solenoid for bank 1 was going bad. It needed to be replaced anyway, which requires us to take the engine down this far. Plus, the primary timing chain guides on either bank could definitely use some replacing as well. So again, not all for nothing, but that timing chain guide material that we were seeing was not actually timing chain guide material, but it was sealant for those valve covers. Pretty interesting. All right, well, I just went ahead and took down the brake hardware on all 4 corners of the car. Everything came apart pretty nicely, which is nice. Now, I know someone's gonna comment, I'm hanging the calipers by the soft line right here. Normally, that is not something that I do, and it is very bad practice to do because you can damage the soft line. But, as I mentioned during our laundry list of things that we're doing to this car, we are replacing all 4 soft lines. So that one, who cares? Let's take a quick look at what that hardware looked like, because it's always fun to go ahead and do some quick parts analysis. The front rotors, when I measured them, were exactly at the minimum thickness, and the rears were just below the minimum thickness, so obviously time to change those out. In terms of the pads, well, this was the story on basically every one of the pads. They were literally at the minimum thickness. In the case of this one, for example, it was starting to wear into our wear sensor here, as you can see. So obviously, time to go ahead and change out the brake pads as well. Not a negative reflection on George whatsoever. The guy clearly fully utilizes the parts that he puts on this car. Can't blame a guy for just letting them go until they actually need to be done. That's something that I could honestly learn to do a little bit more. All right, let's go ahead and take off that lower control arm. All right, first let's go ahead and disconnect our trailing arm. Now we're gonna go ahead and loosen up our ball joint. Sorry, I apologize. You probably can't see this all that well. And now we're just gonna go ahead and tickle on our lower ball joint with this BFH and this pickle fork. She's been tickled. And lastly, we'll just go ahead and loosen up where the lower control arm attaches to the subframe here, and she'll be out. And then we're just gonna go ahead and tap her out. So quickly taking a look at these control arms, the ball joints were in plenty good shape. Obviously I ripped the boots when I used the pickle fork to separate them. The inner bushings were actually not spun. I just checked them in my vise, so those are still good, but these bushings right here have seen better days. They're pretty worn and starting to crack pretty badly in a couple spots. So it's gonna be nice to put some freshies back up in this whip. And it's now time to honk the Tonka truck, or whatever it is the kids are saying. And we'll go ahead and start getting our control arm, our brand new control arm, put back up in place here. It is suspension, so don't be afraid to beat it around a little bit. Next up, let's go ahead and install a brand new expansion tank. Okay, now here we are inside of the engine bay of George's 305 996, and we're gonna go ahead and pull out the old expansion tank, which is actually already not the original expansion tank. I can tell because of the way that this coolant line was sitting. Now, obviously I've already gone ahead and disconnected these, but there's a little channel up here for this coolant line to sit in, and it was actually sitting next to it. They would not have done that from the factory. On that note, on the replacement of this, how is it to do? Well, actually, it's not hard at all. Asterisk, as long as the engine is out of the vehicle. Because when the engine is inside the vehicle, well, your valve cover is sitting right there, and it makes this nearly impossible to do. What do we do?
What do I do?
Well, I already disconnected this upper coolant line and the lower coolant line. That's very simple, self-explanatory. Just pull off the coolant line. And then there's this little plug here for the coolant level sensor, the low coolant level sensor actually. So we're just gonna move these lines out of the way. You do have to kind of unclip some of these hard lines to just strategically, you know, make yourself a little bit of clearance. Move this fuel line over. This just unclips from this clip into the ceiling of the engine room here. And then make sure your little 10mm nut on this wall is not there. And then you can just kind of back this off. And it's literally just slid into this little hanger here. Boom, there. It's just slid into this little hanger via this bracket that's built into the mold of the expansion tank itself. So, old expansion tank is out. We've got a couple things to transfer over. Let's go talk about that. Here we have our brand new expansion tank. Couple things to transfer over. One of which is this overflow tube that comes out the bottom right here. I'll have to just stick that on. This hose is there just in the situation that your cap, which is built in, has a built-in spring inside of it to relieve pressure in the event that the coolant system gets overpressure. Coolant can then spill out of the top of this cap and go into this little area right here. There's a hole that comes out of the bottom right there, and the coolant can safely drain out the bottom of the car. The other thing we need to move over is John C. Our sensor for the coolant level. You can hear in there's a little ball that floats and it moves up and down, and if your coolant is too low, then it touches off to this sensor and sends a message to your dashboard to let you know, hey, idiot, your coolant level is too low. So all you need to do to pull this out is turn it to the right actually, which is kind of counterintuitive, and pop it out. This is a very delicate sensor, so be careful with it. We'll go ahead and put our sensor in our brand new expansion tank and put our overflow hose on here. Boom, nice. She is ready to be installed. Couple things to note. Now, I've had recent issues with this pressure relief valve area of the tank. These bolts come from the factory just entirely too loose, and therefore these don't seal off very well. There's an O-ring inside of this assembly here, and when you're doing the pressure check on the system before you fill it, I've had a couple mystery leaks, and it turned out to be this right here. And that was very frustrating because I'm not looking at this part, of course, because it's a brand new part. I'm looking everywhere else on the car going, where the heck did I not attach a hose properly, or is one of those stupid spring clamps not tightening correctly to one of the metal hoses? Any number of things. Meanwhile, I'll come back and find out that it's this that has been leaking the entire time. So when you get your brand new expansion tank out of the box, tighten these down. Now, fortunately, in this case, this is the first expansion tank in a while that I've taken out of the box, and from the factory these were properly tightened. So that's good, but so if you're replacing yours, just double check that. It'll save yourself hours of leak diagnostic time. By the way, this is the Hamburg Technic brand if you're interested. They clearly, at least so far, they make a quality expansion tank. Okay, there we have it. Brand new coolant expansion tank up in place, easy peasy. Let's move on to the next thing. Next up, let's go ahead and replace these front sway bar links. The upper ball joints for each of these sway bar links has started to leave the chat, as the kids say. The boot for these ball joints is tearing, which means that these are not long for this world. Eventually, enough dirt will get in there, that ball joint will just kind of get, you know, wallered out, and she'll be officially gone from the chat. I don't think I said that right. Anyway, we do need to go ahead and replace those though. So I'm gonna go ahead and razz on these hydrangeas, or whatever the kids are saying. I'm not a kid. I'm not a kid. There we go, one side down. Now I'm gonna go ahead and do the same thing on the right front, and then we'll have another item we can cross off the checklist. Okay, it's now time to knock out what I consider to be a pretty dang satisfying service. Radiator cleaning. Now this is something that I do on my cars every couple years, just because you would be amazed how much stuff gets scooped up into these radiator intakes. There is no place for it to go once it gets in there, which is the kind of unfortunate thing. Even leaves or grass, once it gets sucked in there, it turns into this kind of just like pasty mush that gets like crammed into your radiator fins. And as a result, obviously it impacts how well your radiators and your condensers can do their job. Let's take one last sip of LaCroix, cool off a bit, and get into cleaning.
What do I do?
I'm just gonna go ahead and do a quick preliminary suck. Oops, took out one of the condenser bolts on accident. I was wondering why this wasn't moving. Oh my gosh. All right, let's actually pull this now. See what I'm talking about? Look at that. Considering a lot of it already fell out, look at what was left on the inside of this. So I just went ahead and did a preliminary shop vacuuming of everything on this side of the condenser, but that's only part of the story. Check out what is behind this condenser, between the condenser and the radiator. Yeah. If you think doing this service is not worthwhile, think again. That is one of the major things that starts clogging up the radiator fans right there. Once things get past that condenser and in between the two, dude, it just kind of cakes into your radiator. And tell me that's not impacting the efficiency of that radiator. Just saying. Every couple years, be sure to do this if you want to keep your Porsche running cool. So I'm gonna go ahead and continue cleaning everything here, gonna put it back together, and we'll have yet another item checked off our list. All right, 'tis a new day, everybody, and we're back working on George's 2000 Porsche Carrera. I mentioned we were kind of waiting on some engine parts, which is why we had been focusing mostly on chassis stuff. And now we have those parts, which means that we can start picking up work on the engine a little bit. We do still have a few more things to do with regards to the chassis. Yeah. But for now, I kind of want to start just knocking out a few items on the engine. So let's swap out this oil cooler. All right, now this is not completely necessary, but I'm gonna go ahead and pull off the intake manifold on the bank 2 side just to get a little bit better access to the 2 bolts for the oil cooler that are more towards the center of the engine there. Don't worry, I got George some brand new gaskets for this intake manifold. So anyway, as you can see, I mean, obviously I could have still accessed those 2 bolts in the middle, but this gives us much more access. Plus, I have been wanting to clean out these little holes in the top of the case half. A bunch of old oil that had spilled out of this oil cooler, which is the entire reason that we're replacing it in the first place, because the O-rings are shot. Plus, we drained some power steering fluid down in there when we were taking off those lines. So, gives us a good opportunity to be able to access all this area to clean it that much better. All right, got our coolant line off there. And let's go ahead and get these bolts off for the oil cooler. Be very, very careful with these. I did already go ahead and loosen them up beforehand. If these strip out, you're gonna have a heck of a time. So just take your time with these. Make sure they're wanting to come out nicely. Wow. Oh my gosh. So we talk a lot on this channel about aging rubbers and plastics and how that is kind of the silent killer of a lot of the components, the reason for needing to change out a lot of the things on these older cars. That's because not only do they just age themselves, but they get heat cycled 8 zillion times, which helps accelerate that aging process. Even a rubber or plastic at ambient temperature for 25 years is most likely going to start breaking down and deteriorating in some way, shape, or form. And obviously in the case of an O-ring that seals off a coolant or oil passage that gets extremely hot every single time the engine is run is going to definitely see some wear. Now these gaskets right here, they kind of look like gaskets. They're O-rings. And the ones for the coolant passages are completely flat. I'll show you what brand new ones look like in a second here. I've got them in the back. But surprisingly, it wasn't the coolant ones that were leaking. It was the oil ones. There's oil on both sides of that seal, and there's oil in the little ports in the block underneath it. Obviously, there's been a lot of oil kind of seeping out from this thing over time. So not only are we going in there to replace those O-rings, but we're gonna go ahead and replace the oil cooler as well, just because that's a component that can theoretically fail internally, and then you get some intermix. It does happen, it has happened. And that's not to say you need to like rush out to your garage right now to replace the oil cooler in your car. It's just something that, you know, if you have your engine out, not a bad idea to just go ahead and do it. And that's what we're doing here. All right, so I got the area underneath the oil cooler pretty cleaned up. All of the excess fluids that were just cupped in those areas of the block is now cleaned up. Now we can go ahead and put our brand new oil cooler back on. But also, just before we do that, take a look at these O-rings. The old coolant O-rings are basically just flat gaskets at this point, and they're supposed to look like this. Now it's possible, of course, that there was some iteration of those at one point that was actually like a flattened out little gasket O-ring, or those were O-rings at one point and have just been that heat cycled and beat to crap. So anyway, good news is we're getting some freshy McFresh seals up in there. Let's go ahead and put this oil cooler back in. Next up, we're gonna go ahead and throw a stanky new thermostat and water pump on this bad girl. Previously, George was running the regular stock temperature thermostat. That was the 83-degree thermostat, meaning the thermostat begins to open up at 83 degrees Celsius and to start sending coolant up towards the radiators to get it cooled off. This is what they call the low temp thermostat. This opens up at 71 degrees Celsius. Therefore, you begin sending coolant up to your radiators that much more quickly to start getting it cooled off. Now, of course, there's any number of debates about whether or not this is better or worse, because of course, without a tune, your radiator fans aren't gonna kick on at any different temperature. But on average, throughout a drive, as long as you're driving and moving, your coolant temps will stay cooler as long as there is air passing through your radiators, because there's that much more opportunity for it to stay cooled off. But of course, if you're sitting in stop and go traffic, well, your coolant temp is at the mercy of those rad fans kicking on and off anyway, so it's just gonna creep up to whatever temps they kick on and off at. I always say it's better to have one of these on than not, because like I said, keeping your temps down on average throughout an entire drive or throughout the entire life of the car, it never really hurts, because these things tend to run pretty hot as it is. Anyway, that's a bit of a rant. Let's go ahead and get this brand spanking new thermostat and water pump installed. So I've already gone ahead and cleaned up the mating surface for the gasket on the case half side. Of course, it's brand spanking new on the thermostat side, so no worries there. But I just took my carbide blade, went around it in the direction of the seal to make sure that this thing is really nice and smooth out. Of course, you can see a tiny bit of residual old gasket material still there, but it's actually, it's visually there a little bit just because it's discolored, but there's no actual material still sitting there. Make sure your gasket surface is nice and clean, otherwise you're gonna throw on your brand new thermostat or water pump and you will have a coolant leak. Then the bolts for the water pump and thermostat all get torqued down to 10 Newton meters. All right, just a couple more ancillary things of bull donkey to knock out before we can start putting bank 2 back together, which is the order of the banks that I like to start in for reassembly. But first, we gotta go ahead and actually start doing something with regards to bank 2, and that is pop in our brand new primary timing chain guides, because, well, the bolts for those are underneath the oil pump / coolant oil manifold assembly. If we go ahead and throw that on first, well, then we're not gonna be able to put our brand new timing chain guides in. So let's go ahead, throw those in, then we can get the front of the engine in place, which will therefore secure our intermediate shaft on the front side of the engine, and then we can go ahead and actually start putting together bank 2. Obviously, we have the timing chain guides and our coolant / oil manifold back on the front of this engine. But before we go ahead and throw that oil pump cover back on, I do just want to go ahead and make a quick point. Now, I'm always trying to preach that you don't need to stress about your M96, M97 powered car. Drive it, love it, enjoy it, right? Do the maintenance when things come up. Can catastrophic things happen? Sure. But do you need to run out to your garage and spend thousands and thousands of dollars on something right this second just because someone on an internet forum said that it could possibly happen? No, absolutely not. There is a certain product that this certain company makes that is an aftermarket version of this hex drive for your oil pump. And of course, you see people on the forums going, yeah, the hex drives can shear, and then next thing you know, you have no oil pressure and you're cruising down the road and your engine blows up. Okay, this one right here is most likely original. I don't see why anyone along the road would have swapped it out for this particular engine, but this is a 177,000 mile hex drive. And it, sure, it has some, you know, a little bit of shininess at the touch-off points where it's constantly in contact with the other side of the hex drive for the intermediate shaft and the oil pump gear itself, but she's not bent, she's not sheared, she's not twisted, nothing. This is the stock one. So all I'm saying is, do you need to go buy the really expensive part just because you're worried your engine's gonna blow up? The answer to that question is an absolute no. So don't stress, go drive, enjoy, live with your M96, M97 powered Porsche. But if you wanna do it just to help you sleep better at night, sure, absolutely. I don't blame you whatsoever, no judgment here. Now that we've got our primary timing chain guides installed into bank 2 and then our oil pump and coolant/oil manifold slapped on the front of the engine, we are officially ready to start putting bank 2 back together, which is very exciting because I'm so excited to get this, a brand new VarioCam solenoid, out of the bag. Now obviously I opened this bag, so I cheated a little bit. I peeked in, I was like, dude, oh my gosh. Let's get this out together. Oh my gosh, oh my gosh. Look at this brand new hardware. That is a thing of freaking beauty, dude. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. All right, let's double check. They say cylinders 4 through 6 on it. Where is it? Where is it? Yep, cylinder or cylinder 4 through 6. Woohoo! What a freaking thing of beauty. We've got that brand new VarioCam solenoid installed between the two cams. The cams are timed relative to one another. Let's go ahead, throw some lifters in our cylinder head. Then we can actually get to installing that stuff. Man, look at that bod. Do you guys remember those commercials, by the way? I don't know why that just popped into my head. Look at that bod. That bod. Well, I just saw the Pope singing for the Greek Tabernacle Choir, or whatever the heck the kids are saying. What I'm trying to say is, I screwed the pooch, and I forgot to hit record when I was putting the valve cover back on. So I missed one last little time lapse, but you get the idea. We've got bank 2 back together and retimed, but of course I don't have the spark plug tubes in or the end plugs just yet, because we've yet to time bank 1, so it's nice to just still be able to reference the end of the bank 2 cams to make sure that those are where they're supposed to be when the bank 1 cams are where they're supposed to be. You know what I'm saying? 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 Now before we go ahead and move on to bank 1, we do need to go ahead and do the old infamous stage 1 360-degree check. Why? Because bank 1's top dead center is 360 degrees off from bank 2's top dead center. We're currently in bank 2 top dead center because that's the way we timed bank 2. We need to go ahead and turn the crank 360 degrees to go ahead and get the engine in bank 1 TDC orientation. And in the meantime, we can go ahead and check to make sure we don't have any valves meeting pistons, which would suck. Let's do it. Well, my friends, this engine has done its first 360-degree rotation without smacking pistons into valves. Actually, it's not quite 360 degrees. We need to go ahead and start with the U6 position on the crank pulley in order to properly set the timing for each cylinder bank. So we turned it that far. We didn't quite turn it 360 degrees yet. But the good news is we made it that far, which means we're good. We're good. Bank 2 is good. Hopefully bank 1 can be good too. Well, friends, go ahead and find yourselves the nearest skibbity cat and pet that thing, or whatever the heck all the kids are saying. What I'm trying to say is bank 1 is now done and timed as well. which means it's now time to do the official real check, and that is the 720-degree check. Turn this engine, get every single one of the cylinders through all 4 of the cycles. Make sure that we don't have valves colliding with pistons. We don't want to get the engine back up in the car and find out that something's acting weird. So, unlocking her. Let's go ahead and turn this thing. Okay, that was 360. Done, baby. Done. Internally, she's gooch. All right, well, here she is, everybody. I just got the last few final little things bundled up. She's officially ready to come back off the engine stand to get mated back up with the transmission. I did go ahead and throw 3 brand new idler pulleys on the front of this thing. They were all kind of sounding a little bit crunchy. Additionally, I went ahead and threw in brand new spark plugs and coil packs and got all of the wiring bundled up, put in the cylinder head plugs, etc., etc. This puppy is tight, ready to go. So next step, gonna go ahead, get our tractor running, get this thing back off the engine stand, and we can start remating it with the transmission. And we can start putting it back up in the car. And that's exactly what we're going to be doing in the next episode, where we will take this puppy for a test drive after doing everything that we just did to it. Thank you all so much for being here. I hope you found this video at least a little bit informative and fun and enjoyable to watch. If you did, please do me a huge favor and hit that thumbs up button. And also, please subscribe to see even more super awesome car content coming down the pipeline to you via Fun Ahead TV every single week. Most weeks. Dad life has been a little demanding lately, but I try my best to do it at least every week. Thank you all again so much for being here. I really appreciate each and every one of you. Yes, you. I'm looking right at you. And I will see you all in next week's episode. Later.
Pull back. Drop in and just smack the lip.
Oh, your boy needs a LaCroix. Do I need a LaCroix? I think so. Oh. Dad life, you know what I mean? Sometimes.
What do I do?